Good afternoon, I'm TerryTopcat for TerryTopcat Purrsents for ClusterView.com. It's Thursday the 21st of November and I'm with the beautiful and wonderful and ever so inspiring Louise. Good afternoon.
Oh, hello.
How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
I've been waiting to interview you for a while and met you the one time. Big shout out to Stephen Doyle and if you want to explain how we met. And so this is dedicated to Stephen, and this is how I met Louise. And Louise is going to explain to us what she does and how she's so inspiring to us all. And so let's just start the story.
Yeah,
Louise.
yeah. So you and I met. It was at a place called Positive East in East London, and they are a charity that offers support services to people living with HIV. And what Stephen does is a photographic exhibition. So he photographs people living with HIV and tells their stories. And then you and I met there.
That's right.
But there's a reason that I was there. You know, I remember. One day, so I'm divorced. I got divorced many years ago, and I was happily divorced. And I had 3 children, and work was going really well for me. You know, everything was going great. And one day I thought to myself, I'm going to go and get one of those things called, a sexual health check. Because I get my eyes checked on a regular basis. You know, I get my teeth checked every 6 months. I get the O-smear test. And I thought, I've never had a sexual health test. You know, I mean, I was married, I was divorced, you know, I was sterilised, which means I can't have any more children. So I wasn't really worried about getting pregnant, but I'd never had a test. So I decided to go for a screening. And I remember being called to come in for the results. And I remember walking down the corridor and sitting down, and the woman looking at me and taking my hand, and she said, "Louise, you have HIV." And when she said that, my world just ended. You know, my head was in a spin. I just couldn't comprehend. I left there thinking, you know, I was going to die. And I remember going home and opening the front door. I walked straight upstairs and I was looking for my will, because I thought, you know, I've got 3 children. I have to make sure that things are taken care of. Now, a few days later, I went back to the clinic and they said to me that once I'm on effective medication, I cannot pass HIV on. But that kind of went in one ear and come out the other.
You were still in shock.
I'm still in shock. Yeah. All I'm thinking of is AIDS. You know, I remember in the early 80s.
Tell us what you, exactly. What
you
thought of.
In the early 80s, I just saw these adverts, you know, of the tombstones and AIDS, death, gay, Africa. That's all I knew about AIDS.
And a lot of people, to be fair.
Yeah, and it was nothing to do with me. You know, I mean, I'm of Caribbean origin. I'm a woman. I work in management. I'm a professional. Those things can't happen to me. I couldn't see myself in that. And then I remember, calling up the medical insurance. I had medical insurance, and I thought, well, at least I'll leave the kids, 100k on my medical insurance, if I'm going to die. And I remember them saying to me, we don't cover HIV. So that was another shameful thing for me. So I spent the next 10 years living in not saying anything. I was on effective medication. I cannot.
Anybody other than your sister?
Apart from my sister, I didn't tell anyone. Anybody? I didn't tell my children. I didn't tell anyone at work. I didn't tell my friends. And why didn't I tell anyone? Because I was so ashamed of myself. As a woman, apart from talking to maybe a mate about, sex or someone that you've dated, you don't really go into detail. You don't really go around talking about your sex lives openly like that. So I just felt so embarrassed. I felt so ashamed. I felt so alone. I felt so different and odd. And I come from a Catholic upbringing. I mean, I don't practice Catholicism now, but I was raised Catholic. So that shame of, you know, being a woman and having sex and having this infection, I just was really not in a good way. So
within that 10 years of you knowing and only telling your
Yeah.
sister, did you go to any charities, or did you do any,
No.
did you read up about it more?
No, I done nothing. I tell you what I did do. I got tanked up on, you know, wine, alcohol, fags, anything I could do to dissociate. I'm not sure if you've heard of something called dissociation.
Yeah.
And that's when you just kind of, you're numb. Like, I was numb. And so I used alcohol,
Did
cigarettes.
your children notice that?
No.
As in, like,
no.
you doing
Because they were at school. You know, it's hard enough being a young person and grow up. How can I put this on top of them
Sure.
as well? I just felt it was too much of a burden, and it's a sex thing as well. It's not like mummy's got diabetes.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I just felt really ashamed.
Like, I'm sure a lot of people who get, when they first
Yeah.
find out, then they get
But
HIV.
some people, I have met some people who, you know, who do talk about it and who do tell their family and friends. But I just couldn't. You know, we're all different. We're all,
Absolutely.
you know, we're all very different. And I just didn't find the strength. And then I remember one day sitting down, feeling really munged out. You know, I'd had too much to drink the night before. My breath felt a bit frowsy. And I thought, you know, what is my life? You know, how long can I carry on like this? And I thought, one day I've got to tell my children.
But were you talking to your sister about this? I know you said you
Yeah,
told her.
I spoke to my
So
sister.
you had one confidant that you
I had one confidant. The reason I didn't go to any of the charities was because I just was so frightened of anyone seeing me. If I left something on my browser, if anyone saw anything on my phone, it was like I was living this massive secret, you know? And that's not healthy.
No.
And I knew that I couldn't go on to the rest of my life living like that. And I knew I had to tell my children. So I got myself ready. I started with the booze and the fags. I cut that out. And then I started to go to the gym for the first time in my life, like I'd never been. And then I got myself a coach.
A life coach.
A life coach.
So explain to people exactly what the role of a life coach is.
So the role of a coach is to help you meet your goals. If there's something that you want to achieve, you know, a coach can help you do that. And one of the things I was doing with my coach is I was writing a journal. And he introduced me to journaling because I hadn't done that before. And the good thing about having a coach is that there's accountability. So you have someone to speak to once a week. How are you getting on? Did you go to the gym? What did you say you was
Kind of
going
like
to do?
different to a therapist, but
It's like, yeah, it's like having someone like a teacher, but not a teacher, but someone
Right.
that you can, someone that you're actually, someone that is skilled in holding you in a place, a judgment-free place. That's not a friend,
That's
it's not
brilliant.
family. You are paying them to help you to get to where you want to get to. They're not telling you how to do it. They're supporting you. You know what you need to do, but it's good to have someone to speak to about that. So I was writing in my journal, and one day I wrote in my journal, there's something that I need to say, and I don't know how to say it. And I'm writing to myself in this journal. I mean, I'm not giving this journal to no one. And then the tears started falling down my face, and I wrote down, I have to tell my children that I'm living with HIV. And that was the first time I kind of said it out loud on paper. And the tears were falling. I went into my daughter's room and I told them. And, you know,
how old were they? Don't
I can't remember. I think they were around...
Still teenagers?
They were teenagers, yeah. You know, like, I don't know, 19, around that kind of age, 18, 19. So my daughter gave me a hug, I love you. And I told my sons, and they were like, it's not that deep. And I thought, for fuck's sake, you know, I lived all these years so frightened. And the response was, it's not that deep. And why didn't you tell us? Are you okay? Are you good? Good. So that's shame,
beautiful.
Where was that shame? That was all in my head.
Yeah, we all carry it for our own reasons.
We all carry it.
From life experiences or upbringing and stuff like that.
So I do what I do now to help people out there. Because either it's people living with HIV, or they've got herpes, or it's something else, or they're having an affair, or it's about their weight, or there's something that you just feel that you're not enough. You feel judged. You feel stuck. You find it difficult to talk to. I just want to tell those people you're not alone, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. So what I do, I use a number of different forums. So I've got a podcast, and it's called Aunty Lou's Hour, and it's on YouTube. And I talk to people all around the world who are living with HIV, and they tell their story of how far they've come. I've talked to people who have been born with HIV, someone who found her, husband in bed with somebody else, all sorts of stories. But it gives people hope, ultimately, that, you're not alone. And then I go onto the streets with my microphone and I interview people on the streets and talk to them. You showed me that before. That was and I talk to them about HIV.
Very brave to do that.
Well, I do that for two reasons, right? I do it because it's about education.
All about education.
Kids, once you're on effective medication, you cannot pass HIV on. You can't catch HIV from a toilet seat. You can't get it from kissing. You can't get it from holding hands. Can't get it from touching, right? You can't get it in a swimming pool. You get HIV through sex, or, if you're sharing needles, or actually through breastfeeding, or anal mucus, or vaginal sex. But that's how you get HIV. And HIV is a very difficult virus to catch, because a number of things need to be in place for that to happen. But there are ways that you can protect yourself. One is there's a medication called PrEP and PEP. So if you know you're going to have a bit of a session, or you think that you're going to have sex, you can take this medication called PrEP, and it will protect you from getting HIV. It won't protect you from the other STDs, but it will protect you from getting HIV. So you can prepare for that. And the other one is PEP. So if you think you've had sex and you're a little bit worried that you might have put yourself in a situation and you're concerned, you can go to your A&E within 72 hours and see if you can get some PEP, and they'll advise you.
So back in the day, when mostly in America and New York, when AIDS people, especially in the gay community, there was the lack of drugs, and obviously the medication has mostly improved since then. A lot of people died, and not just gay people, people in Africa, but it was known then primarily as a gay disease, but obviously the medication is completely advanced, and so is education, and so are the charities, and that's why I really admire someone like yourself, Louise, because you're an HIV champion. You've been, tell us all the people that you've been involved with the various companies and HIV charities, and the difference between, and let everyone know, HIV and AIDS. So the difference between HIV and AIDS, so HIV is a human, I can't remember the rest of it, HIV, but it's basically a virus. And if that virus goes untreated, it can go to advanced HIV, in other words, AIDS. But we don't actually use the word AIDS so much anymore. We call it advanced HIV, AIDS. And when it's so advanced and your immune system is totally fucked, right? It's difficult, and there could be a lot of complications. Even with the medication, right? No, because this is why it's so important to get tested. It's so important to get tested, because if you regularly for anybody, everyone should get tested. Married or not married, get tested, right? It doesn't matter, because if you find out you have HIV, you can take the medication and you live a normal life. You're going to live a normal life expectancy. But if you do not get tested and you don't know you've got HIV, and then your immune system starts to shut down, you do a lot more damage to yourself. There's a lot more damage. So that's why we encourage people to get tested. And if there wasn't so much stigma, maybe more people would get tested. And this is quite important. When you first
get HIV, there's no real symptoms. You might get some people say there's a little rash, or
well, back in the day there was, but
no,
now...
but not at the beginning.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know, it's a very slow kind of progressing infection. I didn't know. I was the happiest. I was with my Louboutins and I felt great and I didn't have any issue, you know, because my immune system was still strong. So I luckily got a test at the right time. So my immune system was not compromised. But if you leave it too late, you can compromise your immune system. So prevention is better than having to deal with any issues. So I work with the Terence Higgins Trust, and also there's Positively East, there's Positively UK. I also work with a American HIV charity called the Well Project, and they work with women, and also a
and
European.
How different is that, working with women, to the other HIV charities?
Well, we're working with a woman's HIV charity. Right. There's a lot more complexity, you know, because you have misogyny, you know, women and sex. Women don't have sex. Women are wives, and they sit at home and they cook, and they're good girls, and they, you know, women. So there's a lot more kind of stigma and complexity.
And ignorance.
And ignorance, you know. And then there's financial issues. You get women that maybe, you know, if they contracted HIV within the marriage from a husband, for example, you know, the man could blame them and say, no, it's you, you were lying. You got it.
Also different ethnicity and communities.
Different cultures.
Culture that could.
100%. Yeah, it's difficult. So I do a lot of talking. I do a lot of speech. I go to different organisations. So I've spoken at the Chelsea Flower Show.
How was that?
It's pretty cool. I loved it.
Yeah, I've never been, but And you talked about.
Yeah, I talked about HIV. We had a garden. So the Terence Higgins Trust got some funding, and they put in an amazing garden with an amazing gardener who I met, and it was one of the main gardens. And then you also,
through charities like the Terence Higgins Trust, you must meet other HIV champions, and then who inspire you as well.
Oh, absolutely. There were so many that inspire me. I mean, one of my favourite places that I done a talk was the Vauxhall Tavern. Yeah.
I love that place.
Yeah, it was.
I wish I was there.
It was so much fun. Yeah, and I like talking in schools as well, and I'm going to be speaking for Visa.
So what age groups then?
What year groups are they? They're the older ones, you know, if they're allowed to. I can't remember what age groups they are now, but they're for schools and also universities. I've spoken to GPs.
And being a mum, that must be...
Yeah.
How do I say it? You know, being a mother of 3 children and going to schools to educate children, that must be...
And I was a school governor. Imagine that. I was a school governor. My son was bunking off school and I was a school governor. So embarrassed, you know. Oh my God, you know, and I've got HIV and I'm a single mum. It's like, oh God, you know. Yeah, so there was...
When you go, you also go to churches, so that must be a different reaction, or is there a lot of understanding there, or depends on the church or where you are or who you go to?
It was amazing. I actually went to a 7 Days Adventist church, and they were so welcoming. They had so many questions, and I had lots of hugs after, lots of thank yous. Yeah. You know, knowledge is knowledge. You know, knowledge is power.
Exactly.
You know, and I want to spread that knowledge. You know, I want to tell you that things don't discriminate, you know. Sadness is sadness. It doesn't matter who you are, you know, in life. It doesn't matter how you look. You know, we all have our you know, I want to say cross to bear, but, you know.
And so regarding nowadays compared to when first AIDS and HIV was first made, when people were contracting it, and obviously the education and the knowledge is much better, what do you think the government or people in power could do to help that, as well as, you know, the charities and people like yourself doing it?
Well, there is we are in the process, and when I say we, the Terence Higgins Trust, the National AIDS Trust and the Elton Johns Foundation, they are in the process. They're amazing. They are in the process of putting together an action plan, a HIV action plan, in partnership with the government, and
in this country,
and it's all about having no new cases of HIV by 2030. So that's a target. So everyone in the UK is kind of, and you know, is getting behind that target. So we want to be the first country in the world to have no new cases of HIV. So we'll be invited to Downing Street.
Congratulations.
Yeah, next week with, again, Elton John Foundation, National AIDS Trust, Terence Higgins, for a reception with the Prime Minister, just to talk about the action plan, you know, talk about the work that's happening. We need to keep it on the agenda. You know, we do. We need to keep HIV on the agenda. But stigma is the issue. Treatment is fine. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. You know, I take
intersectional wellness coach. So tell us about that briefly.
Yeah, so as a coach, I coach people to, you know, to meet their goals, whatever that goal might be.
I need to talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, whatever it is, because I've coached people from different walks of life. I've coached a musician. I've coached, you know, other people, but everyone's got a goal. Everyone wants to kind of do something, but it's just about having that support. I'm also nearly launching an online yoga and a course that will be online, where people can learn how to cook vegan food and learn yoga online.
I'll be signing up for that.
Yeah, that's online. Yeah.
So tell us about what neurodivergent means.
Yeah.
Louise.
Well, what that means is, so there's a number of sort of different neurodivergency out there. So there's dyslexic. So I'm dyslexic. There's ADHD, there's autism, there's Asperger's, and I think there must be a few more. I might have missed a few off. But so you've got neurotypicals and neurodivergent. And I didn't realise I was neurodivergent, dyslexic, until I got to my 40s. And when I found out, everything in my life made sense. So what happened is I went for a test because I was finding it difficult at work with some budgeting and some figures. Yeah, I was managing £1 million budgets and I was fine, but I got into a particular job and it was just a little bit difficult, and they sent me for a test and I found out I was dyslexic, and I was so relieved because now I realise why it was so hard for me at school. And when I was at school, I found it really difficult to pronounce words. I found it difficult to read. Just pronunciation was just really hard for me.
And back then, I'm not saying you're old,
yeah,
there wasn't really much. You didn't really know about these terms, about neurodivergent or dyslexia or Asperger's.
I'll tell you what I knew.
Anyone did really.
All I knew
talked about
was that I was at the bottom of the class. That's all I knew, and I didn't, and it was really, really difficult. But what I realised is when I got into the workplace, I was at the top of the class. So, but there was always difficulties for me because when you're for me, I can talk about me.
Sure.
There was a lot of shame attached to it. So from a very young child, being told you're not good enough, you can't read properly, you can't write properly. So getting older, if that's ingrained in you as a child, as you get older, you think you're not good enough.
Absolutely.
So I've always had that, not feeling good enough, and I still have it, and I have to work at it. And my husband has ADHD.
Explain to everyone what
so
that is.
ADHD is like an attention deficit or something, but ADHD. And
what's the symptoms or what?
So there's a number of symptoms. It's difficult to kind of focus for long periods of time. It's difficult. Sometimes you have good days and what I call good days and bad days. Sometimes you get this complete, like you put the quilt over your head and just literally, you're paralysed. You can't get out of bed. And when you think about it, if you knew you had ADHD, all those times where you found it difficult to hold a job, where you found it difficult to get out of bed, where you found it difficult to keep a partner, where you found it difficult to focus, where all those things, it's just the way the brain was set up. And when you realise that, and then you can manage it better. These things don't go away. It's about how you manage it. And then it's easier to communicate.
So if you think you have some of these symptoms of any, like I might be neurodivergent, do I just go to the doctor and ask, can I get a test for being neurodivergent? Yeah,
or you could just kind of Google it, find reputable websites, and sometimes you can do these little tests, because I know some of them can be quite expensive, particularly the ADHD tests and the dyslexia test was quite expensive. But I think if you go online, you must be able to find them, cheaper, or just go to your doctors. But I think it's important. you know.
And it's good that people like yourself are talking about being
Yeah.
neurodivergency as well.
Yeah, because I
It's
know
all
what
about
I'm
knowledge, like you
yeah.
say, knowledge is power. And then with that knowledge, then you
Yeah.
can manage your life. That's
Yeah,
it.
and I notice people that have got ADHD now. You know, I notice it because I've got the knowledge and I can see.
And you're living with your husband who has it as well.
Yeah, and my husband, and I've learnt so much from him. You know, if I didn't know he had ADHD, I think for fuck's sake, this geezer, right? Fucking hell. And if he didn't know I had dyslexia, he would be thinking the same. But
Yeah.
because we know what we're like, you know, it's not an excuse, but it's the way your brain's set up, you know. And when you've got that knowledge, you're
And what's it like in the situation with HIV in the country where your husband's from Romania?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time in Romania. We have a holiday home in Romania. I live in a
Do you
tiny,
like it there?
yeah, tiny little village. No one speaks English, right?
You're learning Romanian.
Yeah, I'm like from
Yeah.
East London, and I go there. You've got all the aunties with their, you know, with their head,
Oh, that's so cute.
headscarves and stuff. Yeah, I'm learning. I'm trying.
He's teaching you, and obviously when you
Yeah.
live there and you pick up
When
words.
he's got the patience, don't forget his ADHD.
Okay.
So when he's got the patience, right? Yeah, he'll teach me. Yeah, yeah. So yeah.
Gosh. So tell everybody where everyone can find you on your social media, and
Yeah.
hopefully one day you'll bump into Louise on the street.
Yes. So you can find me. My website is Aunty Lou's House, and Aunty is spelled AUNTY. Aunty, and I'm on, you know, like what is it? Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Aunty Lou's House. Yeah.
And your website?
And my website, www.auntylou's.house, and LinkedIn, it's Louise Vallace, my government name.
Louise or Lou.
Aunty Lou.
Aunty Lou, it's been absolute pleasure. This has been TerryTopcat for ClusterView.com for TerryTopcat Purrsents, the beautiful Louise. Thank you for educating me, and you're such an inspiration. I just got to tell you that.
Oh, thank
Lots
you.
of
So are
love.
you. Thank you. Thank you.